Hello and welcome for everyone joining here. Let's go ahead and get into it. I think I know many of you that are on the call today. If you don't know me or if I don't know you, I'm Jenessa. I'm the Director of Customer Success here at Alleva. And then I also have Sara with me, who is on my customer success team. So I'll let her kind of introduce herself and her role and kind of what she does on the daily with Alleva.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jenessa. Hi, everybody. I'm Sara. I am a customer success manager here at Alleva. And I get really stoked to be able to meet with all of you guys on kind of a monthly basis and help you troubleshoot anything that's kind of coming up for you, as well as be able to kind of let you know things that are exciting and new and coming down the pipe from Alleva. And also kind of just like help strategize and kind of make your processes more streamlined. So this is definitely an exciting topic that we're going to go over today because this is one of those huge areas where we can really streamline the process and save everybody quite a bit of time.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sara. I'm super happy to have you here. Your expertise and your knowledge is super valuable. So I'm really excited that you're able to present this topic with us today. Before we get going, we do have just a quick question for you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a poll, but really we just want to get an idea of how long it takes for your entire client intake process from start to finish. So we're talking, from the admission screen to the biopsychosocial to, client signatures on consent forms, and all of that good stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and get that posted here. If you guys could just take a second and give us your answers. Obviously, there's no incorrect answer here. I'm seeing, wow, less than 3 hours. You guys are super streamlined. That's amazing. I absolutely love to see that. Got some 4 to 6 hours. Awesome. We'll give you guys probably 30 more seconds to give us your responses. Many of you probably work in, just admissions or just clinical. And so it might be hard to be able to identify, start to finish, this is how long the entire process takes, which is totally fine. We'll kind of share some of these results here in just a minute. It's always fun seeing all of these responses kind of come in. Wonderful. Okay. So we'll share those results here in just a second. So as you guys can kind of see here, most of you, or I guess it's split 50-50 for those that did respond, are less than 3 hours, which is honestly incredible. Hopefully you're seeing that going across all of your intakes. Under 3 hours is incredible. 4 to 6 hours was the other 50% that kind of responded to this, which is fairly typical. Coming in here, I have our average minutes it takes to complete intakes. So this is something that we pulled from our database. Obviously, there's lots of different variables that kind of go into this reporting. And really, this is looking at from the initial time that the edits were kind of made to the signature to complete that document. So obviously, we know that there's, assigned reviewers and things like that that take a little bit of time to complete. With the face-to-face intake, that might be something that you're filling out throughout the entire, intake process where you're gathering bits and pieces of information here and there. So that one, it might look like it takes a little bit more time to kind of complete there. But from what we're seeing on average, most of these intakes that you guys are working on are taking at least an hour each. Which is really interesting. It takes quite a bit of time to be really thorough in your documentation. But have no fret, there is a way to kind of make that process a little bit easier. And so that's kind of what we're here to talk about today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Janessa. And before we kind of dive into that solution, we just wanted to talk about some of the reasons why this is important. So prior to my tenure here at Alleva, I worked in the admissions department for a treatment center. And by far, the biggest lack of follow through with enrollment was just sort of that barrier to entry of having a lot to do before they actually enter your program, before I could actually get an approval of them for my program specifically and then get them through my door. And so really what we're trying to do is just kind of help streamline that process to kind of reduce the burden on both the client and the staff to kind of reduce any sort of redundancy in question answering, so that we can really just like get those clients in the door, and get them into the treatment that they need as quickly as possible. So we have some good quotes here. Jenessa, maybe you can help me read some of them as well. Efficiency in care is caring twice.
Yeah, I really love that one because really, I mean, for anyone that's aware of kind of Alleva's mission and why we kind of are who we are, we really care about the helpers. We want your focus and your attention to be on your clients that are in need, right? We don't want you spending a ton of time in the EMR. We would rather give you back time and have that time with your clients. And so really, really love that quote. Another one that I really liked was by Stephen Covey. The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. Your priority is obviously client care and making kind of that intake process. That's their first interaction, with you and with your facility. And so that interaction really matters and can make or break, the kind of entire course of treatment and what their experience is going to look like. And so prioritizing kind of what that intake process looks like Sarah mentioned, reducing those redundancies, your clients that are coming in and answering all of these questions, it can be very traumatic for them. They don't want to come in and talk about all of their problems, but that's a necessary step so you can provide the appropriate care. So just kind of enhancing that experience, I think is really valuable and really important in having that prioritization.
And then to close us out by Peter Drucker, you can't change how much time you have, but you can change how effectively you use it. And so that's exactly what we would like to segue into with the Alleva solution. So I'm going to hop in here in a moment and kind of walk you through within the EMR ways that we can sort of structure, create, and enhance sort of and utilize these solutions. So I want everybody to feel free to use the chat if you guys have any questions. Jenessa is going to monitor that for me as I'm kind of walking through the EMR. If they're quick questions that you guys have, she'll just go ahead and answer them in the chat. And if they require a little bit more in-depth explanation, we'll save them to the end, and then I can kind of hop back in within the EMR and kind of show you where we're going from there. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right. Can everybody see that? Is that good, Jenessa?
We got you.
All right, awesome. So the first place that I want to start is within our new forms manager. So our new forms manager is really the best place to be creating forms from here on out for sure. And it also has some really cool capabilities. And one of those capabilities is something that we call shared components. So I'm going to go ahead and start from scratch here, and we're going to go ahead and create a form, and I'm just going to title it Form 1 for lack of creativity. We're going to go ahead and create this form. And then within Forms 3, this is where you're kind of able to utilize our component manager and just this sort of Word document that you have here to build out this form. So let's say that this was our initial intake questionnaire, right? I can utilize this just like a Word document. I can make things bold. I can center them. I can go ahead and change the font size if I want to. Oops, it would help to highlight that. There we go. And then let's hop into some questions that we might be asking. So, obviously a really good and important question is sort of why are you seeking treatment, or what is the presenting problem? So this name section right here is what's going to name this component within my form. So that's just going to be the name. The label option here is what's going to actually populate within the form to pop up before this question. And then we have a couple of more options. So required would make this field required to fill out on this form before somebody could move on to saving and signing. So if you need that, you would definitely want to make sure you hit required. If we want to make this a question that other forms can utilize so that this information can transfer from one form to the other, we're going to go ahead and select this box that says allow other forms to see. So I'm going to do that now so we can make this a shared component. And then in a minute, I'll show you how we could add that to another form. And then auto expand just means that this box will continue to auto expand as you're typing in this paragraph. So I'm going to go ahead and insert this question here at this time. And now you're going to notice over here on the right that I have my component manager, which is keeping track of all of the different questions and components that I've added to this document. So it's not going to keep track of anything that you type straight into the Word document, but it's going to keep track of any of these components where there's going to be a feature where they can fill out on the form once it's created. That's going to be tracked here in this component manager over here. And then you'll know that this one's a shared component because you'll see that little S right there where it says shareable. And so from here, let me go ahead and add in just some other questions. For example, when are you hoping to start treatment? For example, and I'm not going to make this one shareable just to show you how they work differently. And then we'll add in one more and we'll say, we'll add in two more. Have you been in treatment previously? Insert that one as well. And then we're going to create one more. And I'm going to say, what was most helpful in previous treatment experiences? And I am going to make this one that other forms can see. So I'm going to make this one shareable as well. From here, a couple of other things to point out that are really important are this autofill for future occurrences toggle. So this is going to automatically always be toggled to on, which is great because this is what's going to enable data from this questionnaire to flow into other questionnaires. If I was to toggle this off, that would prevent data from populating in these future sections within Alleva that are the same sections. Reasons why you may not want something to autofill is if, for example, you're building like a question, like an assessment, right? And you want each time a client is going to fill out that assessment to have a blank slate and you don't want them to see what they previously had put in there. That would be a good example of a reason why you might toggle off this autofill for future occurrences. But for the example of today, since I want to show you how data can flow, we're going to leave that toggled on. Another section that I want to show you here in the component manager is our standard components. So let's say in this form, I actually needed to know what the client's first name was as well. And then I also want to know what the client's last name is. If I go ahead and select any of these standard components and add them to my form, these are going to pull from the demographics section within the client chart. So this is just going to pull that information in so that no one has to re-enter that information on these lines. It will just already pre-populate. So I'll go ahead and add those in there. And then nothing's going to show up in my shared components right now because I haven't published this form yet. But as soon as I publish this form and we go create our second form, we're going to pull in those shared components and they're going to come over from here. And then last thing that I want to point out on this screen is our facility manager. So most of you guys utilize programs that have multiple different facility locations. You all know that you come up here to your logo and you switch location you're in order to see the client lists in those different locations. If you want these forms to be accessible in those other locations as well, you'll have to make sure that you just add them and sync them to all of the facilities, and you can do that right here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save my draft. We can always preview to see what it's going to look like. I can take a look and say, okay, I like the way that that looks and the way that it's going to show up. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to publish my changes. Now we're going to go back to our forms list. And I'm going to find the second form that I started creating earlier to show you how we can add in those shared components. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this form. And I'm going to come to this form that I created, which is part of the ASAM assessment, our Dimension 5. This is one that a lot of our clients like to flow information into. And I'm going to go ahead and delete my little placeholder right here. And I'm going to come over here to my shared components. And then I'm going to add in that question right here. So this is now going to flow from that previous form. And then I'm going to come down here to my other placeholder. And we're going to go ahead and add in my other question right here. Awesome. Now, again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to save my draft, preview it just to make sure that it looks good. Okay. It looks good. And now we're gonna go ahead and publish those changes. All right, now we're gonna go configure our intake sections. So in order to configure your intake sessions, you're gonna be living within the system settings down here. So we're gonna hop into our intakes option. And I'm gonna first go ahead and take a look at my admission intake. Now I wanna add that initial intake questionnaire that I just created to my admission intake. And these are all the bubbles, right? These are all those intake bubbles at the top of the client chart. So I'm gonna go ahead and add in a section, and I'm gonna add in that first form that I created. It's gonna show up here at the bottom of my list, and then all I have to do is drag and drop it to change the order in which this appears. So I want this to be the first thing that I see, so I'm gonna drag and drop that. I'm gonna go ahead and save that at this point. And now I wanna also configure my biopsychosocial. So I'm gonna hop over here to my biopsych. I'm gonna come over here to add section. And this time I don't want that initial form one, but I do wanna add in my ASAM dimensions to my biopsych. So I'm gonna add in this ASAM form that I created. Again, it's gonna show up all the way at the bottom, but all I have to do is drag and drop it. Remember where it is here. And then I'm gonna drag and drop this, and for ease of our example here, I'm gonna put it first up at top so that we'll be able to easily access it. One other cool thing that often clients don't know is that there are standard Alleva sections within these intakes. So these are hard-coded sections that we've built out. And I'll kind of show you an example when we go look at the actual intake of what they look like. But if you ever needed to copy over an Alleva section to another part of an intake, you can actually do that. You do that by coming up here to this copy section. So I'm gonna go ahead and find my admission intake and see what options I have to add into my biopsychosocial. So I already have substance use history added here. So whatever I fill out within the admission intake on substance use history, the same way as these standard components work, that information is going to flow to this section within the biopsychosocial intake. So let's go ahead and also add in previous treatment to show you how this works, to add this into the biopsych. So if I also want this section here, let's go ahead and just drag and drop that up top, and we'll leave that one at the bottom there. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now I want to show you two other things. So the next place that we can have information kind of flow back and forth between to make things easier is the family portal, which is a really good tool to be able to provide documents to clients that haven't been admitted to your program yet, so that they can actually fill out some of this information prior to showing up at your door to kind of help speed up that intake time. So in order to add documents to your family portal, if you come down here to manage portal checklist, this is where you're going to be able to add those forms in. So upon application is upon the user being linked as a prospective client. Upon accepted means that the client has been converted into an actual client. So the prospective client's been converted to an actual client. And then upon discharge is obviously once the chart is discharged. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add this form in here upon accepted. And I'm going to go ahead and add that first form in there. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is configure my notes. So often we want some information that we fill out in those intake bubbles to also flow into future notes that we're going to be doing when we have sessions with these clients. So in order to configure your notes, you're going to come down here to master dropdowns. We're going to head over here to our individual progress notes. And then we're going to find whatever note type it is that we're looking for to edit. And then we'll go ahead and edit that. I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. And we're going to call this one our test note. And I'm going to go ahead and add a section in here. And I'm going to add that dimension 5 into this note. And then I'm going to go ahead and create this note type. Okay, now that we have everything set up, I'm going to walk you through and show you how all of this is going to work for us. So I'm going to hop over here to my client list. And the first place that I'm going to go is I'm going to pretend that I am George Grapes. And so I'm going to go into George Grapes's family portal. And I'm going to come over here to my tasks. And I'm going to find that form that was here for me to fill out. So I'm going to start by saying what was the presenting problem. I'm just going to fill out some quick information in here. Right? So whatever they fill out in here, they're going to go ahead and then hit submit. And now you're going to see that form moves to their completed form, so they can always still view this form if they need to. But I'm going to come back over to Alleva, and I'm going to go ahead and hop into George Grapes. And first, I'm going to show you where that document lives. So if you hop over here to that document manager, and I come over here to this portal documents, you're going to be able to see that George Grapes has completed that form. And if I want to just take a peek at it, if I go ahead and click on that little eyeball icon, I'll be able to see what it is that he filled out in this form. But for you, to show you how this flows into the options here, if I go ahead and come back to the front of the client chart, let's first go into that admissions intake. And let's scroll down. And you're going to see that since George Grapes had filled out that section in the intake, it now already shows up pre-populated here in the admission intake. So I already have those answers and I don't even need to fill them out. I can maybe look at them, read the answer, and I could, of course, have more of a discussion if needed to, and I could add on to this at this point. And I could say yes, and then I could add, last year, something of that nature. I'll go ahead and just hit submit so that that saves there. And then I could continue down my admission intake, right? I could fill out any of these other sections. For use of time, I'm not going to do that, but I'm just going to come down here. I'm going to go ahead and save and sign this. And I'm going to go ahead and use a signature because I don't know what PIN was set up for this instance, but I'll go ahead and save and sign that. And now this document's going to be saved up top. And then we're going to hop over to our biopsych to see how those components are flowing over to the biopsych. Now, one thing that I want to call out here was I made changes to this initial intake questionnaire. These changes that I've made are not going to go back and change what George Grapes' form says, because that was already submitted and that form was saved. So that version of that form is going to live in perpetuity as what George puts in. Now, since I updated this form and hit submit at this point, when I see this question in our biopsych, and we'll go look at this, it's going to have this new answer because it's always going to populate with the latest version of that form that was saved. So you're never going to retroactively change what was answered. You're only going to change for future occurrences what you see. So I'm going to come back to my client chart, and then I'm going to hop over here into my biopsych. And we're going to let this load real fast. Perfect. And then I'm going to scroll down here, and now you're going to see my dimension 5, and you're going to see exactly what I was explaining. So now this has the updated version that I filled out within the admission screening, has my additional questions here that I can go ahead and answer, and shows, again, the things that I saved. And then really quickly, if I go ahead and scroll all the way down to the bottom, just to show you that previous treatment section, had I gone ahead and filled that out within the admission screening, since this now lives here too, and I shared that Alleva component, this would also populate with that information. So I'm going to scroll back up. We're just going to fill this out really quickly. I'm going to say,
Just while you're filling that out, Sarah, I think it's a super important call out, just to hopefully you guys can see how to kind of really conceptualize and how this really can work for you, for not only you and your internal processes, but also for your clients, and not having to answer the same question every time. And from a data integrity perspective as well, someone doing an admissions screen, your admissions person might get some different answers than your clinician who's doing the biopsych. And so it's also nice to kind of see, the differences in the answers and to kind of keep that data integrity up, but also be able to have more structured conversations with your clients that are kind of coming into treatment.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jenessa. All right. So now we've gone ahead and saved our biopsych. And now I'm going to show you how that would flow into a note. So let's say, that I'm meeting with George Grapes and I am going to go fill out a progress note for him. So let's go ahead and find him. I'm going to go ahead and select that. And then I'm going to go ahead and find that note type that I created that pulls in that information over here. And I'm going to go ahead. You have to type one word in this note box in order for these to populate. And as soon as this red auto saves, my document will populate here. And now I'm going to see all the information that I filled out. And so let's change something here. I'm going to say, okay, I'm just changing some of the things. I'm going to go ahead and submit this. And then I'm going to come down here and save and sign this note. And now let's say it's even 2 weeks later and I need to go fill out a similar note for George Grapes. So now let's go look at my progress notes again. I'm going to go select George again. We're going to find that same note type. And I come down here, I'm going to prompt the autosave. And then we're going to look at our form again. You're going to see now the new information that I added shows up in this new note. Now, just to show you that the old note didn't change, we're going to head over to his notes section. And I am going to go ahead and view this old note. There we go. We're going to see still the same answers that I had here. And then let's just go back to the biopsych so that I can show you that those answers haven't changed. I go ahead and zoom in here. I'm going to save this as a PDF. And then I may need to share a different part of my screen so that I can show that PDF. So give me 1 second. Now you should be able to see this PDF and you'll see that this didn't historically change what was written at this point in time. So it's keeping that historical version. Next thing that I want to go through is how we can carry over this information still if we go ahead and if we were to go ahead and discharge a client and then readmit them as a client. So I am going to go ahead and come over to George's chart. I'm going to go to his discharge section. We're going to scroll down here and answer the 2 main questions after I hit the little edit pencil. So we're going to say the reason for admission was that, let's just say, you know, he was refusing to stay in treatment. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Have the client sign this, you sign this. Great. Now we're going to go ahead to our discharge and I am going to say that he went home. And we're going to say discharge. I don't want to send a survey. Great. So now our client's discharged. So to readmit George Grapes, if I come over here to alumni and I find George Grapes, if I go ahead and readmit from here, I'm going to say, yes, I want to use previous demographics. I am going to come down here and I'm going to say his expected discharge date is in December. I'm going to update this. And now I'm going to see how I can copy over that admission screening from before. And I can also copy over that biopsych from before. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to also copy over the notes. I'm going to go ahead and convert this person to a client now. And I'm going to go through the conversion process here. And I'm going to say that they're going in to, let's just say they're going into residential. I'm going to convert them to a client. And now if I go check out their admission screening here, if I scroll through this, you're going to see that it's going to show up pre-populated with what I had previously. And then you can always go ahead and edit this information. And same with the biopsych. We'll just go take a peek at that. The biopsych's also going to populate with that previous information that was entered on the biopsych. And that is what I have for you guys in terms of sort of the workflow. Any questions that we got, Jenessa, on any of that?
We did get one question that I was able to answer, but I think it would be good to answer to the group as well. So Lene had asked if we have a question that mirrors a question exactly and have share on, it will populate in the ASAM form. So something that I want to clarify is that, as Sarah kind of showed us, as long as something is marked as a shareable component, it still needs to be added to the second form as that shareable component. So just because the question is the same doesn't complete the full mapping process. So you'd want to go ahead and make sure that that shared component is dropped in. I do have a clarifying question, Lene, that just came to my mind. When you're referring to the ASAM, is it a custom ASAM form or is it kind of our default built-in ASAM form? If it is the built-in ASAM form, the shareable components are shared between the custom sections of Alleva and from that standard component manager. So if it is that built-in section, that information won't flow. However, if we have built out, your ASAM as a custom document, then those shareable fields could absolutely map. Custom. Okay, Lene, yes. So we could absolutely set up those shareable components.
And just a reminder, Lene, so in order to add those shareable components into a form, let me actually go create an entire new form so that I can re-show this to you. Right, to add those shared components, you have to make sure you're coming over here to this shared box and you're using this little plus sign to drop them in over here. This is what enables them to actually be populated into the form. And then you'll know if you have them because they'll show up as shared right here within your component manager.
Okay, and then we have a question from Kathy. How can I readmit a second time? Historically, we can only readmit once, then we have to create a new client or a new chart.
So every time that you readmit a client, it is actually going to create a unique chart for that client. It's creating a unique chart for every episode of care. Even when you readmit the first time, it is creating a new chart. The only reason that a chart would not be created as a new chart is if you accidentally went through the workflow of discharging and then changing this chart back to active. That would be the only reason that this chart would reactivate. If you're going through the Alleva workflow of readmitting from alumni, it will always create a new chart each time that you go through. You can only readmit from, so like example, right? I discharged George Grapes and then I readmitted him. It's now I have 2 George Grapes charts. The next time that I discharge, I'm going to be discharging that second chart. So when I readmit, I'm readmitting off of that second chart to create that third chart, if that makes sense, the workflow. But it will always create a new chart unless you are accidentally reactivating the old chart, which is not Alleva's recommended workflow because you should be creating a new chart for every episode of care. Kathy, maybe that's something that your CSM can go ahead and look at with you. You won't be able to readmit their first chart again, you're correct, but as long as you are discharging that second client chart, that will show up in there again as an option to readmit. So that's definitely something that I'll make sure I pass along to your CSM so that they can kind of help look at that with you specifically.
Great. I'm not seeing any other questions kind of in the Q&A, so we'll give folks a few more minutes to maybe submit, to really, marinate all of this information. It was definitely a lot, but hopefully you guys can kind of see, the real value in ensuring that your forms are flowing the appropriate data across the board, because again, I can't stress this enough, like having that data validation across forms, but also reducing those redundancies across your teams and different things like that is really going to improve the quality of care. One reason why, we as a team felt that this was important to kind of share with you all is that we feel that this section is definitely underutilized, like especially with the launch of 3.0. If you still haven't, converted your forms, please get in touch with your CSM so we can make sure that we get you added to that wait list, because there truly is so much value in kind of those enhancements, not only in your intake sections, but as Sarah showed, kind of across, the entire course of treatment and in notes through family portal, documents and communication and, those different items. And so if you guys have further questions, please make sure you connect with your CSM. They'd be super happy to, kind of help you navigate, make updates, to forms. It's always easier for us to hop on a call and let you kind of drive. So that way you can start to conceptualize and grasp, exactly what we're talking about, but also, be able to make those adjustments and changes as needed. As we all know, there's so many changes between, accreditations and licensing, with state requirements, that sometimes you just want to get in there and just get it done as quickly as possible. And we never want to be a blocker in that. So if that's something that, you have someone on your team that, really wants to learn, how to build forms, we would love to hop on a call and really show you how you can empower you and show you the importance of that. Great. I'm not seeing anything else, coming through in the Q&A. As always, it was a pleasure for you guys to for us to be able to present how you guys can utilize kind of more features of Alleva. We do have some upcoming webinars in September, so be sure to visit our webinars link on our support site and register for those. We love having you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all that you do. Oh, I had 2 questions. Oh, just thank you.
Oh.
You guys are so awesome. Thank you so much. It really is a pleasure. We love that you're here and kind of want to learn more about Alleva. It means the world to us. Also means the world to us, the important work that you're doing as well. So anything that we can do, you know, for you guys to help and support you in that, we're all in as committed partners. So we'll give you a little bit of time back in your day. Thank you again, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, everyone.